Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our community forum. We are delighted to have with us today Renee Peavey of the Puget Sound Honor Flight to help us celebrate the month of Veterans Day. And before I hand the meeting over to Renee, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what's happening here at the Mustard Seat. I'm Maureen Riley. I'm the operations director here. And we are about ready to finish construction on the very first assisted living facility. No, it's not a facility. We don't use that word. The very first assisted living homes on the Key Peninsula. We have our ribbon cutting on November the 12th and from 1:30. And we would love everyone who's local or who feels like making any kind of a drive at all to come and join us on that day. It'll be really exciting. Our next community forum on November 17th will be a presentation by the Wounded Warrior Project, and we're also looking really forward to hearing that. In mid-December, our new nutrition manager, Carolyn Benepe, will be doing a presentation giving an outline of the kinds of programs that she plans for the Crandall Center here, utilizing our commercial kitchen. So we will keep all that posted on Facebook and on our website so that you can join in. Now I'd like to introduce Renee Peavey, who has a lovely presentation for us. Renee?
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Mustard Seed, for allowing me this opportunity to spread the word about our organization, Puget Sound Honor Flight. We're an organization that operates under the umbrella of Honor Flight Network, which was started back in 2005 by a physician's assistant, a gentleman by the name of Earl Morse. He was seeing World War II veterans come into his office, and the World War II Memorial in DC had opened just the year prior, 2004. It was a beautiful memorial, and he had asked if any of these gentlemen had been to see their memorial, and they said, no, we're going to get around to it. And so after many veterans came in to inquire or get their health checked, and Earl would ask them about all this, he decided to enlist a few members of his flying club, and they flew 6 members back to Washington, D.C., 6 World War II veterans, and out of that, the Honor Flight Network was born. And so they made their first inaugural flight in 2005 with their little flying club. And from there, fast forward to today, there's over 131 hubs across the nation, and we've flown over 250,000 veterans back to Washington, D.C. to visit and reflect at the memorials that were built in their honor. Puget Sound Honor Flight started in 2013, and that came about via Facebook. I had my friend, high school buddy, Kathy. She was posting pictures. She was living in Illinois at the time, and she was escorting veterans back to Washington, D.C. And my husband had retired in 2009, was driving me nuts. And I reached out to Kathy and said, hey, what are you doing? And she told me, she said, I'm part of the Chicago Honor Flight, and we take veterans back to Washington, D.C. to see these memorials for the weekend. And I said, well, that sounds wonderful. How can we get involved? And so she sent us information about the Eastern Washington hub, our sister hub, Inland Northwest. And they had started back in 2009. And so they had taken Eastern Washington veterans. So we called them up and offered to volunteer our services. And they told us, you know, we have 250 applications here without a home. We don't service the Western Washington veterans. All of our dollars are focused on Eastern Washington veterans. So we need you to start a hub. So after a lot of conversation, we went over the following weekend and we met with them. We watched a movie called the Honor Flight movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's free on Amazon now. It's a wonderful movie. It chronicles 4 veterans that made the journey, and it's a heartfelt, really wonderful movie. And it got both my husband and I, Jim and myself, hooked. And so we set about with those 250 applications and returned to the west of the mountains and set about starting up a hub. And so in March of 2013, we had our first board meeting. And in October of 2013, we did our first flight. And to date, we just finished up our 30th trip and have brought over 1,500 veterans from Western Washington back to see the memorials built in their honor. And so it's really labor of love. We're an all-volunteer organization. We're a 501c3. We have no paid staff. We do work out of our homes. We're very passionate about what we do. We're very much a working board, and we just do it out of love for our veterans. We take 4 trips a year, usually one in April, one in May, one in September, and one in October. And we bring about 250 veterans every year and support staff. And as I talked to Maureen prior to getting signed on here, I explained to her that I could talk about Honor Flight all day long, but I also know that a picture or a video could be worth 1,000 words. So I have a couple of those today, and Maureen is going to graciously share one of the videos with us that'll capture, it's from our inaugural flight in October of 2013, and Eric Johnson went with us. And ironically, it was during the government shutdown. So it's about 6 minutes long, so enjoy it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them, and I'll do my best to answer afterwards.
Time is a thief that comes in the night and robs us, even the bravest and the best. These men, World War II veterans, the last of a great dying generation, came to SeaTac Airport to remind themselves that some things can never be touched, even by time.
I'm 88 years old, and so I'm at the end of my journey, and this is one more honor that I'm receiving from our people.
It is called an honor flight, put on by thankful souls to honor World War II vets while we still can, with what they call one last mission.
I look at all these old guys, and then I realize I'm one of them.
This would be the first ever honor flight for Puget Sound vets.
I think it's wonderful that we're all here, and it's wonderful of these people to do this.
They were a stoic lot with nothing left to prove to anyone, on their way to Washington, D.C. for some unfinished business.
Very solemn ceremony, but something I want to do before I cash in my chips, you know.
They've been there, they've done that. Band of brothers.
Upon arrival, there were cheers, hugs, and applause.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The next morning, they loaded up and followed their escorts through the city to Arlington Cemetery.
You got to stop and think, I was lucky. I came back, but every one of them, there's somebody that didn't make it,
Forward. Oh.
They were there to see the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Guard.
So it's moving. It's really moving. But, you've got to be proud of your country, and this young man standing right doing that. You've got to be proud.
The government was shut down that day, and when they got to the World War II Memorial, there was a protest in progress at the National Mall. But for this occasion, politics politely stepped aside.
Young man, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Welcome to the memorial.
They entered the memorial, a place of honor built on a foundation of incalculable loss. There was ceremony, and then time for reflection for men like Henry Richmond, a Pearl Harbor survivor.
And I wondered if I would ever get to see it.
There you are.
There it is.
and Navy man Dale Knockin,
Boy, isn't this something, though.
who had a special purpose here.
But this is a story about Jack Cuniff. He wrote me a letter. It's dated November 11th, 1944. He was killed 35 days later in the Battle of the Bulge. And this is for Jack. So I'm going to leave it here somewhere. And they will... Yeah. So long, Jack. Now I've let him go.
70 years is a long time to hold on to anything, especially a friend. Ivan Larson fought in the Battle of the Bulge. This place was built for him.
Well, you know, I try to forget about it, but it just never leaves.
And at the Marines Memorial, only one man got off the bus.
Oh, it's with me every night. I have nightmares every night.
Pee Wee Justice was there when the flag was raised on Iwo Jima, an event paid for with the blood of 6,000 Americans.
But I do want to say this. It took me 45 years for God to take the hatred out of my heart for the Japanese and the Germans. And today, I love them just as I love you all. Because God, He made it possible.
Thank you. Some wounds don't heal. Even time won't dare touch them. The homecoming was a joyous affair. Hundreds of people, music, an airport filled with honor.
It made me cry. It gave me a warm heart.
But this is amazing that people, because that's the thing that you lose, I think. People don't care. But they do. They really care. And ain't that something?
An entire generation is slipping away from us, but these men know at least that time will never steal what they did. The thief in the night is shamed in the presence of true heroes. Eric Johnson, Como 4 News.
That really sums up our trip, and it's so nostalgic to watch that video because so many of those heroes are no longer with us anymore, and time is of the essence for our journeys. We're our World War II vets. This last trip was the first trip we'd ever made that we didn't have a World War II veteran on, and you know, the average age of them are upwards of 97 years old now, and so it's, you know, it's, and then the ones that are up there like that are, you know, oftentimes too ill to make the trips, or just, you know, or don't want to travel that far. So a trip, I mean, I'll go over the logistics of a trip. I mentioned earlier, we take 4 trips a year. Of those trips, there are 112 people on each trip, and that is 2 bus loads. That's how we come up with that, 56 people on a bus. So we don't charter, my mistake. We go on Alaska Airlines, who have been a wonderful partner for us. They give us some good airlines discounts, and they give us some free airfare, and you know, some of it we have to raise money for, most of it, but they've been wonderful. And so we set about, of those 112 travelers, about between 55 and 60 are vets, and then the rest are support staff. So that would be photographers, medical people, logistics people such as myself, and then there are the rest are guardians. And guardians are we allow a veteran to take up to one non-spouse guardian from the next generation. So a son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, or even a friend, a younger friend, that would like to accompany them on the trip. The trips are completely free for the veterans. The guardian fee follows the guardian. Our guardian fee currently right now is $1,000 because of costs. We haven't raised it since we started. It most likely may go up about $100 for next year. That's all inclusive. It includes the airfare, the bus, the food, everything. That's about how much it's cost us to send a veteran. But the guardians pay their own way. The veterans are not required to provide a guardian. We have a huge guardian base, and I take a lot of phone calls asking when they're able to take a trip again and escort a veteran back to DC. And those guardians will pay their own way. The guardian fee is 100% tax deductible. We would not be able to do these trips without the guardians. And so we provide documentation and paperwork for that. We bring 30 wheelchairs on each flight, understanding that many of our veterans aren't fully ambulatory. And so we're prepared for that. We see a lot of memorials when we're back there. We start out with the World War II memorial. So let me back up. We take a direct flight from Seattle. We usually leave on a Saturday morning directly to Baltimore. We go to the hotel, we get freshened up, have a banquet, and go over the logistics for the next day. We'll get up in the morning, and then we'll see the World War II memorial, the Korean, Lincoln, Vietnam memorials, and then we'll go across the way to see FDR, Martin Luther King, and finish up with the Navy Memorial. That's our first day. And then we return back to the hotel, have another banquet with some nice little pomp and circumstance for our veterans. And then we get up in the morning, check out of the hotel, and head across town to Arlington, changing of the guard, the Women's Memorial, the Marine Corps Memorial. And we finish up with the Air Force Memorial, where we have lunch and then head back to the airport, and we get home on Monday night at about 8 o'clock. We have a homecoming that's a surprise for the veterans. So all you veterans, if you're listening out there, plug your ears, that we encourage friends and family to come and welcome our veterans home. It's been particularly poignant since we've transitioned to our Vietnam veterans, because they've very much gotten the anti-welcome home. And so to be able to see these veterans be welcomed home and handshakes and applause and has been really cathartic for them, and just made us feel really wonderful that they're getting this acknowledgement that they didn't get all those years ago. One of the other aspects of our trip is something called mail call. That's also a surprise for our veteran. We reach out to friends and family during the call out process and gather cards and letters and ask them to mail them in. And we put them in a big decorated envelope by school kids, along with letters, cards and letters. Gig Harbor High School, Peninsula High School, all the local grade schools have been a very integral part of doing this. Lighthouse Christian's held a big role in it, to decorate up these envelopes and put them in there. And then we pass them out, call out their name and rank on the way home on the plane, and daisy chain them back to everybody and let them open up these wonderful mail call envelopes. So that's another special part of our trip for our veterans. We currently have about 600 people on our waiting list, just because we can only take about 250 a year, and COVID kind of put a little stop on that. Our funding, we get no federal funds. We have a couple of good partnerships. Talking Rain has been wonderful, Sparkling Ice. Like I mentioned, Alaska, there's been Brown Bear Car Wash, things. We get some good help from those individuals, but a lot of them just come from good-hearted individuals, VFWs, American Legions, just individuals. We ask that the veterans don't donate anything prior to a trip, but a lot of them, after they return back, want to pay it forward, so they'll donate at that time. So that's pretty much our trip in a nutshell. You know, we're always looking for volunteers, additional help with mail call, any way people that can get involved. We're also looking for veterans, especially out on the Key Peninsula. They tend to hide, and a lot of them hide in nooks and crannies, especially our World War II guys they're not quite, they're getting a little bit more visible with the Vietnam guys as they're a little bit younger. But it's amazing how many people haven't heard of our organization. We always get a good bump of applications after a trip because they go home and tell their buddies about it and let them know it's legitimate. Oftentimes we get phone calls even after the veterans have put in an application offering them a trip. And if they've been on the waiting list for a year or two, they forget about it and they hang up on us thinking we're, soliciting something. So, but it genuinely is a free trip, and we enjoy doing it. And we've been doing it, like I said, since 2013, and we'll continue to do it until we can get every veteran their honor flight. So the next video that we have is about 11 minutes long, and it shows an actual, well, the first one did too, but this one is a more recent honor flight from back in this past spring that was done by one of our guardians that also acted as a, that went with his dad. His name was Steve Hamilton. He did a really wonderful job and was willing to share with us that.
Well, we don't have any questions yet, so why don't we go ahead and show the next video?
Okay, that sounds great.
Puget Sound Honor Flight with veterans from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. God bless our veterans. God bless America.
Welcome everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, look at 10. 1, 2, 3.
We're at the Korean Memorial. It's very impressive. There's a number of bronze statues around representing those that didn't come back.
Laverne Gertler, 91 years old, Korea.
Yes.
We are at the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C.
And this is part of the honor flight?
Papa's honor flight.
How's it feeling, Papa?
Very impressive.
Names are arranged in the order that they go. You're standing here looking at the first and the last side by side.
Officer Laverne Gertler, United States Navy.
That's for you.
Sergeant Lionel Johansson, United States Marine Corps.
Thank you.
Commander Robert Jones, United States Navy. Private First Class Bernard Moskowitz, United States Army.
Mr. Youngblood? There you go. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your meal.
Yeah, so that was a more recent trip. And as you can see, there's lots of smiles and tears, and we get lots of thank you cards afterwards telling them what the trip means to them. And getting those rubbings from the Vietnam Wall is sometimes heartbreaking when you listen to the stories about them, but it's very cathartic for our veterans. The one thing I wanted to mention on this video that we showed was Bernie, the gentleman that played the taps. He was a Korean veteran, and he plays taps at Mount Tahoma Cemetery quite a bit. And so when that was one of the neat things about our honor flight and having the shutdown in 2013. What was born out of that was all of our active duty color guard and buglers and vocalists that we had for our ceremonies all had to cancel because they were all military and they weren't allowed to show up. And so we had some wonderful people in DC that reached out to kids. And I'm pretty sure we're the only honor flight that uses the kids. And that was born out of that event, which was neat. And so it gives the veterans come back and talk with us, and just the way you can mix the young with the old, and they just enjoy it. They just, it really is neat. And it provides a neat opportunity for the younger generation to meet up with the older generation and show their mutual respect. And that was a wonderful thing that sprung out of that. But Bernie, when he heard that we're gonna do a ceremony at World War II Memorial, we had a bugler. One of the gals was friends with him that winds up going on most of our honor flights as a guardian, asked if he would be able to play taps at the ceremony for his fellow veterans. So of course we said yes. And you heard him at the hotel, you'd hear him playing taps and everything else, practicing up, and he did a really wonderful job. So that was a neat honor for him, and for them to be able to capture it in video for him, I think was really kind of special too. So kind of a full circle moment for him and his friends. He had a few friends that went on the trip along with him too. So that was a neat aspect. We hear all sorts of kind of full circle moment stories like that. So makes them special.
Maybe I missed this, but is there an actual parent organization, excuse me, a parent organization that then you are all different chapters of?
Yeah, I touched on that, Maureen, but that's a good question to clarify. So when I spoke early on about Earl Morrison, he founded the Honor Flight Network. So what happened is now they are our umbrella organization, but each of the 131 hubs across the United States they operate independently. We have a set of broad rules that we have to adhere to, but we're all, and we get benefits from being honor flight back in DC. So we'll get certain accesses or certain things that it makes it a little bit easier because they have a good reputation. So we lean into that, but we very much operate independently. So when you talk, one person's honor flight experience or trip schedule might be different. Some, the ones on the East Coast won't fly. They'll come up on a bus. They might have a day trip. Like the ones from Alaska come down to Portland, spend the night, go back and forth from Portland to DC, come back. So all of them operate a little bit differently. Some bring upwards of 8 buses. We've stuck with a 2 bus because we do commercial airlines and we're going from coast to coast. And so we're kind of limited with the number of buses that we can take at one time. Our sister hub on the east side of the state, they charter and they do an overnight trip. They only spend 1 night in DC. So everyone's a little bit different. So you find your niche and what works for you, and you just kind of run with it that way. But yeah, no, that's a great question.
Does the parent organization own the buses? I noticed that they're completely wrapped. How do you get those buses?
Yeah, so that's only 1 bus that's wrapped. And so we have formed partnerships. Again, there's several bus companies. That was called, they had said Coach USA, but our bus company's Dillon's, I think it's an umbrella of Coach. And that's just one particular, but no, they don't. Honor Flight, and then the network is, they used to have a headquarters in Springfield, Ohio, but with COVID and it's all, they have an executive board and a paid staff board to oversee everything, but they have, they spring in from everywhere. They do everything now pretty much via Zoom, which leads me to another. When I said there's 131 hubs across the United States, not every state is represented by an honor flight. So like, for example, Montana doesn't have an honor flight currently, and neither does Idaho. And so our Eastern Washington hub will take those veterans to the extent practical. But what Honor Flight Network does, that the mother hub, what they do is if you do not live within 150 miles of a hub, you can go on what's called a Lone Eagle honor flight. So you can sign up and rise to the top of the list. And when it's your turn, then what happens is people from that are beyond 150 miles from an honor flight hub, they'll have 6 to 8 trips a year, and they'll give them, Southwest Airlines gives them passes, and they'll spring in from all over the United States, and they'll come in and they'll meet at the Baltimore hotel where we happen to stay. People stay all over too. They'll stay in Baltimore, they'll stay in downtown DC. You can stay anywhere you want. You can do the program however you want to do it. However, there are more people, some are better familiar with honor flights than others. So anyway, so they'll come in, they'll do a bus tour. It'll look pretty much like ours until such time, then they go home, so they travel in and out by themselves. But once they get to downtown DC, or once they get to Baltimore or their destination, then it very much looks the same. And there's also another aspect that Honor Flight Network does, and it's called TLC, the last chance. So if a veteran from any conflict has 6 or less months to live, but is still capable of traveling, we can reach out on their behalf for them, or they can reach out on their own behalf and go to headquarters, and they make, I want to say 4 to 6 of those trips a year, and they'll bump them up the list and get them. So currently we take our veterans, as do most of the other honor flights too, I could probably say all of them, but I don't want to totally misspeak, but by conflict. So World War II, of course, will bump to the top, then Korean, then Vietnam, and then ultimately it'll be any subsequent wars. Currently, I don't think anyone's gone beyond taking Vietnam veterans because the list for Vietnam vets is so long. So we don't have a waiting list for our World War II or Korean guys. Just as when the applications come in, they just bump to the top of the list, and then we invite them on the next trip. And so our waiting list is made up of predominantly, almost exclusively Vietnam veterans at this point. So yeah, so that's the way that works. But yeah, that was a good question, Maureen.
You know, I think that our organization would love to participate in the envelope decorating scheme.
Yeah.
You know, we have been involving local school kids in decorating cards for seniors for Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day and things like that. So that would be a great way to have an intergenerational program here. Some of our seniors could participate and some of the school children could participate.
That would be wonderful. And we need, you know, we're always needing, you know, cards and letters from friends or from civic organizations and, you know, places like that. And we do 10 by 13 white envelopes. I've got a stash of them. I'd be happy to drop them off at your office up there to you guys, and you can get them and I'll be happy to pick them up. But yes, the mail call is such a special part of it, and it's so needed because we're always having to continually, you know, restock all of that stuff, you know, because and Veterans Day might be a good time to, you know, we get a lot Veterans Day and Memorial Day, but it's hard to get, you know, the continuous stash of those envelopes from cards and letters from friends I keep saying friends and family, from the civic organizations and the school kids and stuff. And it's hard, you know, especially the summertime, you know, when we do our spring flights, you know, the kids are out of school for the summer. So it's nice. It's nice to be able to do that. So yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay, we'd love to do that.
Yeah.
The trip you described that Puget Sound Honor Flight does, that 2-day trip with a long flight on either end, that must be really tiring for those older people.
Well, I agree. And then think of Inland Northwest, the Spokane hub, they only do one overnight. We do 2. And it does sound like a lot. And it is a lot, but we do pace it. And then the veterans, of course, they don't have to get off at every stop if they don't want to. And we do try to give anywhere. So for example, when we're at Korean Lincoln in Vietnam, that's one stop and we're there for a couple hours. So we try to like give them a long time to be able to pace themselves while still trying to be able to, you know, see as much as we can see. But you're right. It sounds exhausting, and I'm sure it is, but a lot of them are on a high. We go down and listen to them in the banquet rooms and they're like, well, it's really 7 o'clock back at home. It's like, you don't think of it that way. Just enjoy the trip for the weekend that you're here and worry about the time change when you get back home. But yeah. So, but yes, you're right. And we do have veterans maybe by the end of the second day that, because we're able to drive right up to the memorials, they don't have to get out and go see them if they don't want to. We bring enough wheelchairs that by the end of the trip, a lot of them that were thinking maybe they didn't need a wheelchair, we'll bring one, just push it around. It's a portable seat if you get tired, you know, things like that. So yeah, it's a big trip for them. They're tired afterwards. So am I. There's a lot to do, a lot of moving parts to make these trips successful. When Jim and I started the first one back in 2013, you know, we had no idea what we were doing. And we still remember going to the airport that morning with our Dodge Durango, swinging by Subway because we didn't know what we were supposed to do for lunches or food. And just our van or our Durango is stuffed to the brim with name tags and what we perceived as goodie bags and all this paraphernalia. And it's just kind of more from there. We, like I said, we have a wonderful working board, just dedicated volunteers that we just had created a whole new family over these last almost 10 years now. And it's just, that part's been a wonderful added bonus. And we didn't know we didn't know any of these board members when we started out. But, you know, you'd think you would have recruited some friends but unless you're really passionate about something like this, you really have to be all in. And these, I don't know, I blame it on our veterans. I said they just came out of the woodwork, and we're blessed with the group of people that we work with, and, you know, they're lifelong friends. And we just, that was a very wonderful. And our family back in DC that we've met, you know, we've worked with these people we've had the same bus driver for 10 years, you know, so it's really neat.
Well, it's a wonderful organization, and
Thank you.
it's really touching to watch all this and hear about it. And I want to thank you from my heart.
Yeah, well, thank you, Maureen. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to get you those envelopes. You're on my radar.
All right, we will look forward to it, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks again, Renee.
All right, and if there's any questions or any follow-up that I can do to help out, just you've got my contact information. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you so much, and thank you, Julie, as well.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.